The day the first crack appeared in the earth, everything in Kofa felt wrong. I remember the sky, a clear, empty blue that seemed to stretch forever, but it was the kind of sky that held no hope of rain. The sun beat down on us with a fierceness we had not known before. The air itself was heavy, like the earth was holding its breath. Our people had lived through dry seasons before, but this one felt different. The land seemed to shrink under our feet as the heat pressed down, day after day. I watched Malami Haruna, the last Gadi, our elder and the keeper of the old ways, walking slowly through the village square, his white robes trailing behind him. His movements were slower these days, and there was a distant look in his eyes that troubled me. He was the man everyone turned to in times of crisis. In the past, when the rains delayed or the crops failed, we went to him. He would pray to the spirits, perform the sacred rituals, and somehow, balance would return. But now, things were different. This time, even as Malami Haruna moved, the village seemed unsure. His authority, once absolute, was now questioned. I could see it in the eyes of the villagers. People whispered that the old ways no longer held power, that maybe the spirits had abandoned us because we had abandoned them. Ademu, Malami Haruna's son, was at the heart of this new belief. He had returned from the city, a man educated in Western ways. He spoke of progress and modernity, telling the people that the drought wasn't a curse but a natural phenomenon that could be solved with new methods of farming, irrigation, and education. I remember the day Ademu returned to Kofa. He had brought with him books and tools, things the people had never seen before. The world is changing, he would say to the villagers. We can't keep praying to the wind for rain. We need to take control of our own future. Many of the younger villagers listened to him. They saw him as the way forward, a man of reason in a world where the old beliefs were crumbling. But Malami Haruna did not waver. Then the drought worsened, weeks passed, and the river began to dry up. The fields, once green and fertile, turned to dust. Our animals grew thin, and the children's laughter disappeared. The air was filled with whispers, rumors that the spirits were angry because we had forsaken them. Some said it was because the people no longer followed Malami Haruna's teachings. Others, like Ademu, dismissed the talk of spirits altogether, saying that this was just the cycle of nature. But when the fire came, everything changed. It was a night like any other, still, hot, and suffocating. Suddenly, a shout echoed through the village. Fire! The fields are on fire! I ran out with the rest of the villagers, and we watched helplessly as the flames consumed the crops, the millet, the groundnuts. Everything was lost. The flames lit up the night sky, and the air was filled with the smell of burning. It was as if the very earth had turned against us. Malami Haruna stood in silence as the fire raged. I could see the pain in his eyes. This was more than a loss of crops to him. This was a sign, a message from the spirits. I didn't understand what it meant, but I knew it was bad, and so did the villagers. The fire didn't just destroy the fields, it sowed doubt in the hearts of the people. Some began to wonder if Malami Haruna had lost his connection to the spirits. Others whispered that maybe it was Ademu's fault, that his new ways had angered the ancestors. The fire was only the beginning. The morning after the fire, the village of Kofa was silent. No one spoke, but everyone was thinking the same thing. The village was being torn apart. The drought had already brought fear, but now, the divide between the old and new ways had grown into an open wound. A meeting was called in the village square. On one side stood Malami Haruna, still calm, still holding on to the traditions of the ancestors. On the other side stood Ademu, his arms crossed, surrounded by the younger men and women who had started to believe in his ideas of progress. The tension between them was as thick as the heat that filled the air. Ademu was the first to speak. His voice was steady, confident. The fire was not the work of spirits, he said. It was the drought. The crops were dry, and something sparked it, nothing more. We can rebuild, but not by performing rituals that no longer work. We need irrigation. We need modern methods. My father's ways, he gestured toward Malami Haruna, are from another time. We must move forward. A murmur of agreement rippled through part of the crowd, but the older generation, those who had grown up with Malami Haruna's guidance, looked to the elder for his response. Malami Haruna stood slowly, his frail figure casting a long shadow in the setting sun. He didn't speak for a moment. letting the weight of the moment settle in. Then, his voice, though quiet, carried across the square. "We have lived on this land for generations," he began. "Our ancestors tilled the soil, they prayed to the spirits, and the land provided for us. But we have lost our way. The fire, the drought, they are not accidents, they are warnings. The spirits are angry because we have turned our backs on them.